Jimmy, just thanks so much, first of all, for taking the time to speak to us today. You've got some pretty big personal news to share with us. Are you able to talk about that just now?
Yeah, so obviously I've made the decision to retire. Last season will have been my last season playing. So yeah, it's just really about sharing that news and sort of the next part of the journey.
We'll get into your spell at City in a little bit, but I just wanted to take a bit of time to look over a remarkable career. Born and raised in Vienna, in Austria, making the move out to Melbourne when you were about 10 years old. Can you tell us a little bit what it was like growing up over there and then making such a huge move at such a young age?
Yeah, it was certainly different. I think, you know, culturally and from an environmental point of view, it was growing up in that sort of European lifestyle was different, and it was very much having a ball at your feet from the first couple of steps. And, you know, football was such a big part of life over there, and, you know, we had a very tight-knit, I think throughout my whole childhood, we had a tight-knit group with sort of my mum, my dad, my brother and me. And, you know, making that move to Australia at 10 sort of brought us probably as a family even closer together. And it also, you know, if you look throughout my life and throughout my career, I've moved a lot. And I think, you know, as a family, we did that a couple of times. And yeah, it probably sort of explains then a little bit about how and why I've always enjoyed moving around and new sort of challenges and stuff like that.
Well, you were never shy about taking on a challenge in your career, and I mean, even before your professional career began, you'd already overcome so much. You were, of course, diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia as a teenager. What was it like facing something like that so early in not just your career, but your life?
Yeah, it was obviously massive. And I think I'd speak again about sort of the tight-knit family and that sort of the four of us together. I think that was another thing that brought us really, really close. And I think, you know, throughout everything that's happened in my life, in my career, they've been a massive part of that. And I think, again, you know, I always sort of look back and go, I'm happy that I was probably sort of 15, 16 and maybe a little bit more naive than I am now. But in terms of, you know, being able to get through that and then looking back, it was huge for me as a person in terms of it probably made me grow up a little bit quicker than other 16 and 17-year-olds, and, you know, just learn a lot about myself and about life. And it probably taught me some really important lessons that stood me in good stead, not just for football, but for life as well.
So your breakout kind of comes at Adelaide United. You win an Australia Cup there, and you're also voted A-League Young Player of the Year. What did that kind of period mean for your confidence and your growth as a young player?
Yeah, I think it was massive. I think, you know, as a young player, I was at Victory for 3 years and I never really broke through. And I remember going to Adelaide thinking, if this doesn't go well, then I could be, you know, out of professional football, for example. And yeah, and I think the manager there, Josip Gombau, was amazing with me, and sort of, you know, I didn't start particularly well, but he showed a lot of trust in me, showed a lot of faith in me that I needed at that point. And exactly like you said, the more I played, you know, the more games I got under my belt, the more confidence I started to gain, and that was probably my biggest sort of growth as a player in that period.
Tilio play, Jite back in, cuts it back, Jeggo! Jeggo scores for Adelaide, and United take the lead.
It very quickly went from, oh, can I cope at this level, to, okay, I want another challenge. You know, what's the next step? And I think for me as a player, that sort of period was really, really important.
Do you kind of feel like those early experiences in the A-League helped prepare you for the leap that you would obviously make and go into Europe?
Yeah, 100%. I think for me personally, if I went to Europe at, let's say, 18, 19, I would have come back very quickly. I think for the type of person I am, for the type of player I was, you know, what I went through at Victory and then at Adelaide sort of built enough of a base for me to be able to then go over and stay over. And I think that was always one of my big things, that if I did ever get the chance to go over, that I didn't want to come back quickly. And I think especially that Adelaide period, again, for me as a player, as a person, sort of really set a foundation for them being able to go over and stay over there.
You had really successful spells in Austria, Greece, Belgium, and even Scotland. Did you enjoy playing in such diverse football cultures, and did that kind of help shape you as a person and as a player?
Yeah, I think so. I think it sort of comes back to having that challenge, and I don't know where it really came from, but I was always wary of getting too comfortable, because I felt like if I got too comfortable, then I'd stop developing, I'd stop learning new things, and and I always wanted to test myself, and you know, I went over to Austria and had a really good period at that one club, and then again it was like, what's the next challenge, what's the next thing I can do, and yeah, it was just opportunities would come, and you know, there was a lot of big decisions to make and a lot of moving, and you know, oftentimes it would just come down to my gut and what sort of got me going. The Greece one was a classic sort of example. I'd been in sort of what you would call like mainland Europe and those sort of, and in Austria for a long time. And then Greece sort of came out of nowhere, and it was just like, there was just something about it that I was like, I want to go try this. And I just loved, you know, the different cultures, different styles of play, the different challenges, different atmospheres, all those type of things around football. And that sort of, as I sort of probably got to my mid-20s, late 20s, where, you know, the Premier League, the Bundesliga, those leagues that you aspire to get to are probably a little bit out of reach, then I sort of always thought I want to experience and test myself in as many different places as possible. And that was sort of those last maybe 3, 4, 5 years in Europe.
From your spell in Austria, you won the Austrian Cup with Sturm Graz, which must have been such a special moment, but you're talking with such passion about your times in all these different countries. What are kind of some of the big career highlights from those moments at different clubs that you had?
I think again, I think when you look back at your career, it's all about moments and it's all about experiences. And I think, you know, you bring up the Austrian Cup, like that night, just everything, the emotion around it, you know, the lead up to the game, all those types of things are just amazing things that I've been really lucky and I'm really grateful to experience. And, you know, Greece, they were playing in big derbies. You know, we played games against Polk where games are getting called off, fans are storming on the pitch, and at the time you're shitting yourself. But looking back, it's an amazing experience. And, you know, Greece, in terms of the passion of the fans, was something that I'd never experienced. And again, you know, then I went to Belgium, which was something completely different from the point of view that I'd always been at clubs that were sort of challenging for the top couple of places in the league. And then, you know, I went to a smaller club in Belgium that was fighting relegation, not so much money, and all of a sudden you're in a completely different environment where people's jobs are on the line. And, you know, that was something I'd never really experienced, and a whole different type of pressure, a whole different type of challenge that again is quite difficult, but something really enjoyable to experience. And when you do stay up and, you know, seeing what it means to everyone at the club was really special. And then Scotland was sort of, from when I was younger, my dream was always to play in the UK at a big club. And, you know, I was so lucky that fairly late in my career I got the chance to go to Hibs and experience that. And the culture, the intensity around football over there is amazing.
Playing at such a high level obviously brought you to the attention of the national team before long, and playing for the Socceroos is a dream for so many. Just what did it mean to you representing Australia on the international stage?
Yeah, it was obviously amazing. I think as a kid I never sort of, I wasn't in too many of the youth national teams, and even when I initially got called up, I never thought that I was anywhere close to getting called up. I only just started breaking through in Austria. So it sort of come out of the blue, and I just remember the first time you go into camp and the first time you hear the national anthem before a game, and you're just like, wow, this is on a whole nother level to anything else I've ever experienced. And you're just absolutely desperate to get back there and to stay there and to be as part of as much as you possibly can be. And I always think that, especially with the Australian national team, the feeling around it and the sort of the atmosphere and the culture that comes from all these guys from all over the world, flying across the world into one spot to try and sort of achieve something for your country or try win a game of football, and just being back with Aussies and being back with that sort of atmosphere was always an amazing sort of thing to be involved in, and again, moments that you'll cherish for the rest of your life.
Your career kind of then comes full circle. You return to Melbourne and you joined City in January 2024. How did that feel to return home at that time?
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. It was sort of, you know, again, with all that travel and with having a young family, and I got to that point where I was sort of the last couple of years I really wanted to settle and sort of maybe try and stay at somewhere longer than a couple of years, and, you know, even from a family point of view, just be a bit more settled. And there's no better club in Australia to do that at than Melbourne City. And there'd been discussions in the years previous where I probably didn't feel quite ready to come home, and yeah, in that January when it came up, it was sort of perfect timing from the club's point of view that they just lost someone, and from my point of view as well, and it all happened really quickly. And yeah, to get back here and, you know, see so many familiar faces in the first instance was really nice, and to be back in the A-League was lovely. And, you know, I remember the first couple of weeks just sort of chuckling. It had been so long, yet so much is similar, but so much is different, and it was really nice. And then, you know, over the sort of last 18 months here, getting to know the people at the club more and actually the club in itself and what it stands for and the way it's run. It's been unbelievable, and it's actually for me been a real eye-opener and something I've really enjoyed.
Injuries have obviously hampered your time on the pitch at the club, but you still made 19 appearances in City colours, contributing to the successful championship winning campaign of the season just gone. You kind of already answered it, but have you enjoyed your playing experience as a player at Melbourne City?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, again, when I first came here, again, we talk about challenging ourselves, different league, different style of play. That initial thing of me trying to work out and the coaches helping me, this is what we need from you, etc., was really enjoyable for me as a player. And, I loved the fact that 32, even coming back to Australia, that I could still be challenged, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and coming to a club that the expectations are so high internally and those demands are placed on you every day was really enjoyable. This season, obviously with injuries, couldn't have gone much worse, to be honest, but from a point of view of being part of that playing group and being part of the group that we had was really, really special, and to sort of be able to sit back a little bit more, not be involved and sort of try and help in different ways, but just to sort of see what the group was achieving, how everyone had come together, and then to see it sort of culminate in the success at the end of the season was amazing.
Whilst your time on the pitch, obviously last season was limited, the coaching staff, every single one of them, have spoken about the importance of your presence, your experience, your leadership, and how crucial that was off the pitch last season, particularly with so many younger players coming into the first team. How did you kind of approach contributing off the pitch as a leader last season?
I think it's just something I've always enjoyed as I've got older, is helping young players. And I think, when I look back at my career and all the sort of ups and downs and all the turmoil you go through and all the time you spend doubting yourself or getting frustrated, and it's really nice to be able to help them, and also to say to them, it's okay, like everything you're thinking, I've been there. And I really enjoy that aspect of doing it, just because I think in the culture in the club, and we all want the same thing, we're all sort of going towards the same goal, and whatever my role is in that, whether it be playing week in, week out, whether it be coming off the bench, or whether it be helping, off the pitch, I want to do that to the best of my ability. And I think everyone at the club's got that attitude, whether it be on the pitch, off the pitch, behind the scenes, and I think that sort of drags you along. And me and Naboo spent a lot of time together, obviously both being injured and both being sort of older players, and we wanted everyone to be successful as much as we would if we were playing, and it was that thing of, okay, what can we do, what can we bring to help that happen? And if we played a tiny part in that success, then absolutely brilliant.
We've alluded to it just slightly previously, but the final chapter of your playing career is concluded by picking up a championship medal in front of your friends and family in Melbourne. Was that a bit of a dream ending?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was sort of, once I'd got to that point where I realised that this season I wasn't going to play again, and you're sort of again taking that step back and seeing how good the group is, the way everything's working, the way everyone's working together, and I think, Petrillo had said it to me and Naboo, and the gaffer had said it to us, and we'd spoken a lot about, even the boys that maybe weren't injured, that weren't playing, about everyone being a part of it. And I think that was what was really special in our group. We had young players come in during the season who maybe started 5 or 6, 7 games in a really important period and did really well, and then maybe weren't in the squad for the final. And that was a big thing for us, that everyone was in it together, no matter sort of what role you were playing on the day. Me and Naboo were sitting up in the stands and we were so nervous, but also really confident, and just again knowing what everyone's gone through and seeing that, and then being able to celebrate with the boys and was amazing. At that point I had a good idea what I was going to do, and it was really nice to stand on the pitch with the boys that I've spent the last year with and sort of celebrating, like you said, with family and friends. So yeah, it was lovely.
It's obviously a really difficult point in any professional player's career when the playing side of it comes to an end. How was it you were able to kind of bring yourself to that realisation and feel okay with that as you were getting towards the end of the season this year?
Yeah, look, I think it's really difficult. It's really difficult, and I think it's something that I felt probably a shift a couple of years ago where I started really looking at things from a coaching point of view and from another side. And I think having been injured and sort of stepped away a little bit and seen things a little bit more objectively, and I just found myself constantly, looking at it from what are the coaches doing, why is Vidi doing this, why is Gemma doing this, and I could just feel sort of myself shift into what sort of, again, what I said earlier about your gut and what really gets you going, and And I felt that sort of shift, and with the way that the sort of situation came together, and there's a real sort of excitement of what comes next. Even speaking now, I'm so grateful to have had the career that I've had, and I'm really lucky that City brought me back here and that I'm able to finish my career in a place like this where there's so much opportunity and so much to learn, and yeah, so it's tough, it's difficult, it's not easy, but there's also a real excitement for what comes next.
Just on that, is that kind of the main focus then for you in what comes next, is looking at the kind of coaching, potentially management avenue going forward?
Yeah, 100%, and that's always been something that I've been interested in, ever since I was young. I remember sort of every manager that would come in, I'd look at what they do, why are they doing it, ask lots of questions, and I think, the first team staff with me, especially the last 6 months, have been really good, and sort of once I stepped away from playing a little bit, and let me in and explaining things to me and let me ask questions and let me in on why they're making decisions and stuff like that. And it's something that I've always really, really loved and always seen as my next step. And I think, again, speaking about that last 6 months, that sort of probably crystallized in my head that now is the right time to sort of make that step and to go into coaching. And again, it's exciting from the point of view that, you come to the end of your journey as a footballer, and then it's almost like you're starting again in terms of there's so much to learn, etc., etc. So I'm really excited for that, and like I said, really grateful that I get to end my career at a club where there's so much opportunity from a coaching point of view.